Hey, this is a video on how to style hover states. What is a hover state? A hover state is when you have an element on the screen and your mouse rolls over it and something about that element changes. That's a hover state. So it was in a resting state. You can think of it as before, then you roll over it and it's in a hover state. And that change could be anything. It could be background color, text color, size, underline, anything like that can change the hover state. So right here, I've got a really simple A tag here, and we're going to do a few things to it. First, I'm going to show you how exactly to change the hover state, and then we're going to get a little bit more into turning it into a button and doing some more fancy stuff to it. So the first thing you need to do to change a hover state is you need to type the selector of the thing you want to change, and then you type a colon and then the word hover. And now everything between these brackets, you're going to put the things that about it that you want to change, just the thing that you want to change. So in this case, I'm going to say color green. So now when I roll over it, I hope you can see that the color changes to green. That's it. It's as simple as that. And you can use, it doesn't have to be an A, it can be a class. So I could do something like this and say class equals button. And then down here, I would just say dot button hover. And the same thing would happen right here. Class equals button dot button hover. The same thing would happen. So let's do something here. Let's make this look like a button. So I'm going to style this button class that I just created. And one thing I want to do is that I'm going to want to control things like margin and width and padding. And the thing to know is that an A tag is an inline element. And if you remember back to when we talked about this, inline versus block elements, inline elements line up, horizontally, no problem, but they don't let you control their width, or they let you control padding a little bit, but the width and the margin, things like that, they don't want to get too big. They only want to be as large as the content they have. They're not like block elements that want to take up all the space. They just want to spread out and take up all the space. Inline elements just like, oh, they just want to take care, just be in their little space and they're happy. So what we're going to do first is we're going to change this to a block element. So we're going to say display block. Or another handy one we could use, we could also say display inline block. This is really handy because it allows us to create elements that will stack next to each other, but they'll still have all the properties of a block element like width and margin and things like that. So let's do that. Let's do an inline block just because. So I'm going to do a few things here. I'm going to say, I'm going to get rid of that ugly underline that nobody wants. Get rid of that. Done. Family, sans serif. I'm going to font size 2M. Okay, I'm going to give it a background of teal. And we definitely got to change the color now. color is to white. Let's definitely need some padding. And padding, okay. Okay, there we go. We've got a decent looking button, right? We could give it some margin to pull it away from the side. There, just for, yeah, why not? Okay, so we've got a decent looking button now. So now everything that I want to change about the button is what I put inside of Hover. So I don't really want to change the color green anymore. I'm going to change it to background purple. Okay, so now I roll over it and the background turns to purple. See that? Okay, I can do other things, like I could make it slightly larger. I could say width 200 pixels. I don't know if this is a good idea. I'm just trying to show you that you can do it. You get into a funky situation here where you're not really rolling over it anymore. But I mean, you can play around with these things. Sometimes they cause problems. Sometimes they can be really interesting. Let's take off the width there. But I'll show you one nice trick that is actually quite, it's used a lot because it adds a lot to your design. It's the details of your design. It's all about, this is all about the tiny little details, and it's called transition. And transition kind of gives it an animation property where right now I'm rolling over it and it immediately snaps from one color to the other. But if I put a transition in there, it's going to slowly fade from one to the other. It's going to transition from one to the other. So if I say something in transition 0.5 s for seconds, it slowly fades. I don't know if you can see that. Let me make it longer. I'll pay 1.5 seconds. See, it took a while for it to get to there. It goes back immediately because we don't have a transition on the other side. So if I add that into here, we'll get, now it fades in and it fades out. Fades in and it fades out. So that's probably a little long of a time. You know, you don't want people are zooming through a site and, you know, constantly hovering over this and that and this and that and this and that. It's nice to have a little transition, but you need to give them time to get on and off. So, you know, 0.3 is usually a really good, 0.5 is not bad, but 0.3 is usually a pretty good one to use as a transition. Let me do that. It's just a nice little touch. Notice as you're browsing the internet and all the sites that you go onto, when you roll over one of the links in an article, like, does it immediately pop or does it have a tiny transition? It just makes the experience a little bit softer. It's just one of those details. So that is how you code a hover state. So it's basically just the things that you want to change. You don't have to put all the things in there, you know, all of the properties that belong to that element. You just want to put the things that are going to change. In this case, it's just the background color, and it's just a little bit of a transition right there. So you should be putting this in all your projects. All your projects, your links should have a hover state, your buttons should have a hover state, anything that's clickable should have, especially your designers, you control these elements, you should have a special hover state for everything. So, all right, if you have any other questions, I'll see you in class.